Welcome to the Leadership Table, where conversations inspire, lead, and elevate. I'm your host, Jason E. Brooks. And today I'm joined by Jason Berkowitz, hospitality veteran and founder of Arrow Up Training. Jason has opened more than 50 restaurants, led operations at major brands, and now works to turn compliance and safety training into culture-building experiences that stick. We'll talk about why onboarding sets the tone from day one, how supervisors bridge expectations and execution, and Jason's vision for We Arrow Up, a free essentials training platform for restaurants nationwide. Let's dive in. I like to ask a personal question, just so the listeners get to know the person, So quick, rapid fire. Book, podcast, or playlist that's been in your rotation lately.
So here's how I work with books.
Uh-huh.
At nighttime, I try to not read anything that's going to get my brain going because then I can't sleep. So nighttime are for fiction, nonfiction, biographies, fun books. I started the Harry Potter series, not even restarted. I've seen the movies. I'm going back to the books, which is great. For daytime books, I have started audiobooks, which is somewhat new to me, and I'm on this train right now. Maybe you'll VO yours at some point. Maybe it's coming out, maybe not, doesn't need to happen. But to me, I love that while it's sort of working out or doing something. So a recent book is Abundance. Ezra Klein's one of the co-writers of it. I made it through the whole thing. I appreciate its perspective, which is saying that the Democratic Party used to be a party of building. It was a party of making things, which led to economic prosperity and the middle class. And along the way, due to lack of trust with somewhat of the government, started to put up a lot of regulation and barriers and lawsuits and stopped building things. And if we want to actually have a world of abundance, abundant energy, abundant, healthcare, things like that matters, then the Democratic Party for itself needs to look at and say, at what cost, is all of these death by 1,000 paper cuts. That matters to me very much in the restaurant business out here in Los Angeles, where I'm a founding member of the Independent Hospitality Coalition, because we are working diligently to remove a lot of the red tape that we deal with when opening up restaurants in California, whether it be permitting costs, delays, mismanagement, So I like that book, and I'm figuring out how to take that down to a level of a fairly blue state, because to me, the heart of community is small business. So that is a book that I've recently just finished. I'm starting a new one, and I'm digging the audiobooks, and I like it during the daytime and getting my brain going.
I was just about to say, you would know more than just about anyone about that abundance mindset and the negative kickback that has happened from the shift of what that party used to be and what it's shifted towards. And you have front row seats to seeing that in California. So yes, that makes sense. All right, not to get too political, but next question. Best concert last 5 years. Best concert you've been to. And I know that you're a musician, so you always want to give praise. At the same time, you're critical. Best concert last 5 years.
I went to the Grateful Dead at the Sphere, and that was really awesome. And that's aging myself, and that's doing everything. But it was my birthday. It was this year.
Yeah.
It was just such a fun experience, because even it begins before you even enter the Sphere. If you go to the Sphere for any reason to see a show, I love entering through. For any future shows to go, enter through the walkway coming from, I think it's the Venetian or the Palazzo Hotel. Okay. Whether you stay there or not, go have a bite to eat, a drink, or whatnot. As you're walking over with everybody and the culture of the community of whatever the band and the vibe is. So for that, it was great, because you had multiple generations of people, grandkids, grandparents, kids, everybody together, whether they're rocking their tie-dye or their skull and steal your face or dancing bears. There was just this feeling of joy that was in the air. And there was this moment in the show, right before the show, somebody spilled something on the steps, and it must have been bad. I couldn't really see, but one of the attendants who worked there, or one of the team members, cleaned it up, and apparently had it was this big spill and did this thorough job. And then once they finished, around them, everyone gave them an applause. And I was like, man, this is so, and it was a sincere one. It was sincere appreciation. It was like, first off, how cool is that, right? That this person was like, that's cool, thank you. Secondly, that a thorough job was done, or that would be first for safety, because if you slip on these steps, it is no bueno.
Yeah.
But thirdly, I was like, man, I dig this group of people, this truly appreciative, some would say maybe soft in some areas, but big-hearted in others. I just loved that moment. And then the band came on, it crushed it, and the visuals and the experience and this, multi-dimensional thing. And so when we think about restaurants, what is the all-encompassing experience? At the end of the day, it's how you feel. Sometimes it's just the food, the music, right? If you transfer it over, what's the product that you're communicating? But then can you take it further? And what's the full experience, and how's the emotion? So tying it back to this theme, it was just powerful, Then I went to a concert where somebody was on a acoustic guitar, and that was powerful. It's what you do with the tools you have.
Speaking of tools, you went through a whole tool chest in your, background, in your resume. You've opened 50 plus restaurants. You've held senior leadership roles. But out of all of that, what are the things you learned from opening restaurants, running restaurants, being as a leader that inspired you to launch Arrow Up Training, though?
One very basic notion that I learned years ago. Everybody just needs to know, or wants to know, two things. What's my job, and how am I doing? And what's my job is in setting and training expectations. So you've documented what good looks like, and you've trained it in a way that lands and communicates. The second one is, how am I doing? And how am I doing is in feedback, any sort of feedback. It could be a checklist that checks off that says this was what was expected, this was completed. It could be a more formalized review. It could be little flybys, just want to let you know you crushed it last night. Things like that. And when I was opening up restaurants, or when I was coming in as a no matter what my position was, as long as I was somewhat above store authority, from director of service up to chief operating officer, I would say, no one talked to me for 2 weeks to 30 days, because I'm just going to go put a full training program in place. Because if I open up my emails, even, I'm done. Because now I'm working on what's urgent. And if I'm working on what's urgent, I can't focus on what's important. And by doing that, I was going to mitigate so many of the problems that were going to become urgent. And then at that point, I said, you know what? I can start to systematize this and roll this out as a bit of a blanket, off-the-shelf toolkit for restaurants to use, so that they're not starting at 0, they're starting at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, right? And then they can fill in the gaps. And, we'll get into how we started and where we moved, but if there's any takeaways for any leader, anyone here, and you're crushing what you're sharing with them, and how to give feedback and when to give feedback and all of that. Are you answering these two questions for anybody who reports to you or reports up or you support? If you aren't, go focus on that immediately.
If you have emerging managers who need to grow into confident leaders, or if you're part of a nonprofit, a culinary workforce program, or a ProStart Education Foundation looking to equip students and alumni with the leadership skills, that's exactly why we created Coach Up. It's a cohort-based program that helps new leaders communicate clearly, coach with confidence, and succeed in leadership roles. In just a few weeks, they'll have the skills to thrive, and you'll see the difference in your people. Learn more at jasonebrooks.com/coachup. Why is it that we seem to be revisiting the question of training and how to train so much? It seems like we tend to have one of those industries that it's it is almost always a reset or people figuring out the how to do it, whether it's a new brand launching or whatever. And they're always trying to figure out, how do I actually train right? And how, not just train right, how do we stop sucking? And when I look at other industries, does it really happen that often? Or is it that I'm just not in those circles to see that sucking that much? Is it just me, or have you seen it that we keep coming back to, we need to do better at training our people? You put together a very great tool that people are able to really dig in and do it. But why is it that people starting new in their business need to answer that question of how do we stop sucking at training?
I think it's a great question, and I think every industry struggles with it. I think restaurants struggle with it probably more for a few reasons. One is such high turnover. Thinking about the cost centers and how that's actually affecting you in so many, holistic and unholistic ways. And I think there's not that many out of the box solutions that make it easy for people to take, adapt, and build on. So we're getting deep into SOPs out of the box. Just here you go. Here's even beyond training. Here's your standard operating procedures, literally out of the box, ready to go. And that 80 to 90% of what you need is there. You can fill in the gaps on your recipes and stuff like that, which is bigger than the 10%. But I'm saying is all the other stuff, it's out of the box and it's ready to go. So I think it's lack of bandwidth. I think it's a lot of first-time owners that get into the game and don't realize they don't know what they don't know, and they're not listening to these podcasts and they're not absorbing. And so they're starting a little too late and behind the ball. And then once you're behind the ball, you're putting out fires. And then at that moment, you are once you get to the point that you're focusing on what's urgent over what's important, and you're not doing a balance of it at some point, then you're behind the ball. And so that's one of the solutions why we're coming in saying, look, here you go. It's not everything you need, but it is so much of what you need out of the gates. Get going. Let's get you moving. And then you figure out who your rock stars are, because organized people work for organized environments, and then they'll help you fill in the gaps for the other stuff. So it's turnover, it's industry, it's new owners, it's lack of resources out there. It's a lot of these things. And sometimes it's just in the education of, like, owners will say people are terrible. They don't get it. Well, did you set them up for success? And unfortunately, that attracts a lot of restaurant owners. Restaurant owners, especially small independents, a lot of the best are out of their mind. And so they're so good at certain things and not at others. That's why when I was a consultant, I learned to have a very thick skin. And I would say to them, fire your bullets at me, not any team members, and let me figure out how to communicate them and translate that into action. Because they're not going to understand what you're trying to solve. And we're actually, what you think you want to solve right now, you're not communicating in the right way. But I know what we need to solve.
Let's go to the opposite end of that spectrum. So we just talked through those that hit the ground running and don't think through the processes needed to actually get training done the right way to be the most effective. Let's look at the other end of that spectrum, that end of the spectrum where the brand's been around since 1960. There's 1,000 locations, and they got that damn compliance training back from 1982, and no one feels it. No one gets it. They're just crying their eyes out, like, please just let it stop the bleeding. How do you make compliance training, especially something as sexy as compliance, how do you make it engaging and relatable?
And we say, come for the compliance, stay for the vibe. Thanks for that setup. Or we used to say, we make sexual harassment training sexy. And you gotta have a little bit of fun
hit it right on the nose. Just hit it right on the nose, man.
Right on the nose. So thanks for that lob. It's a good lob and a good setup with that. Let me tell you, a story that came to mind only this past week, and I didn't even think about it while we were building out our anti-harassment training. I remember when I was a new I think it was my first job as a restaurant manager in a fine dining restaurant, and I was front of house. And the sous chef used to every morning love, because I was the morning manager. I'm paying my dues at 6 a.m. showing up. And the sous chef used to love to come out every morning and pull out his flip phone and show me just terrible, disgusting images or short little videos or little things on it that was just like, just very chef-driven, terrible. Some of that was absolutely hilarious, and, I have a high tolerance, and some of it was just, I can't get the image out of my brain, disgusting. And it was like, he didn't do it to make me laugh so much. It was a power play. And it was, this power move and this move to make me feel awkward. And that's what he was going for. I want to see how awkward I can make you. And I laughed because I needed him to like me, because when the back of house likes you, life is easier in the restaurant than not. And I absolutely hate that. And I've done a good job of working on that. Any restaurant that I was a lead operator in. And we're working on that through moving the culture. Now, that's not a story I told, but that's a story that we get and understand. And we have a lot of stories like this that we captured on our training. And so we go back to, how do you make it interesting? You capture real stories of moments that we can all relate to that are not the obvious quid pro quo. If you sleep with me, I'll give you the better shifts, because we all know that. And you've got to communicate that ain't right. But other things that are a little bit of the gray area and a little bit of the lines of just when we know, like, oh my God, that did happen to me. And to me, our training is modern because we're telling real stories that people are talking about. We're folding it into GIFs and memes and mixed media stew. I love it. Somebody just took our training to see about bringing it on board. And they said, it's like a documentary. I feel like this training should be on Netflix. And I was like, that's awesome, because we're capturing these videos.
Is awesome.
That's awesome. And they signed, and they're a big company. And I absolutely love that. And then they talked about how, but then all of a sudden you're going into all these like fun little interactions and stories and memes and GIFs and podcasts. So that's how we do it. But why do I care about that for our training? What am I looking to do? Well, if you're in a state that requires it, then you need to do it anyway. So as somebody said to me before we started, can you make something a little less painful, please? We went further. But whether you are or not in a place that it's mandatory, hopefully it achieves three things. Number one is you've established as a company, this ain't cool. Right. And so that story, I'll get that story on. Other people have told stories that we know, right? Let's make it clear that we don't accept this. Second is, let's try to put it in the chef's brain or whomever's doing it, right? That, let's show you what it's like from the other perspective. Do you want to be this person? Like, God, I didn't really think about it, that you're right. Wow, that, this individual has other things from their past that they're bringing to the table. And when I do this, I'm triggering stuff that I don't want to do. Like, I don't want to be that person. So let's give them the opportunity to kind of see, like, this is a professional place. It's restaurants. We're all weird. Be weird. Just, can we point out to how you're making, now, if you still want to do that, well, then, okay, part one is said, we've cleared that you shouldn't do it. So now you're staying or going. The second is, let's hold a mirror to it. And then the third is, let's empower the people with real tools to get out of it. So for myself, right, today I'd be able to say, look, you gotta do better than this. That's disgusting. You want to make me laugh? I love something funny in the morning. Come up with something that's smarter than that. That ain't smart. Come on, you could do better. And to put it on top of that and to redirect it and handle that bully in that moment. And there's a lot of very specific stories and examples that we use of how somebody got out of a situation or redirected a situation or helped somebody else in a situation before taking it up a notch. Now, absolutely, you take it up a notch. But if anyone's listening to this, one of the reasons I don't subscribe to a government-issued course is they're not looking out for you as the small business. They're looking to cover their own ass. And so I like a course that says, let's see if you can figure out how to handle the playground yourself And if it's not working, let's make sure there are the right reporting mechanisms in place and the right triggers and the right documentation to handle it. Absolutely. And protect everybody who needs to be protected. But in the meantime, because restaurants are America's #1 first job. So a lot of these kids are just learning how to be in a professional environment. And today, there's less interaction than there was when you and I started in restaurants. There's more online gaming. There's more things that are less personal skills that people are developing. So they're developing them at work. So we get into the whole thing. It's not just, you can't do this. It's like, okay, this is a strange situation you're probably going to encounter. Let's bring in somebody and how they dealt with it, right? Or, hey, this is an awkward situation, but you're going to grow from it. It's not harassment or abuse, but like, figure out how to navigate this moment because that's going to give you a life skill.
I think you're absolutely right in in forcing our way, for lack of better terms, to manage the gray, because that gray these days is really deep because of the point that you made of there's less human interaction between people with the people that are getting into restaurants, the #1 industry, as a first job, and them getting into it. They have less practice being around people, talking to people. And what happens online is a really thick gray line to where there's lots of inappropriate things happening and no one there kind of guiding them and putting up those guardrails of what should be said or done or shown between people and what shouldn't. Male, female, male, male, female, female, it doesn't matter. But managing that gray area and getting that from day one, from the onboarding, from the orientation, making that stick so that people can understand how to then take that into whether they're going to be a school teacher or build rockets. It doesn't matter. But we can't turn our back on that gray area, and it needs to be laid out more within a way that is relatable to the people that are hearing it, and it's being taught to. So I think you said media stew that you're making in order to help find the pieces that stick for them to get them to understand what it's like to be the other person on the other end of that conversation. Because when you're online, they're probably not thinking about what it's like to be the other person in that big old dark room called the internet. They don't really care. They just want to voice how they feel, what they feel in whatever words that they choose. And when you're in a professional setting, that's not something that's going to stick or is going to have you employed for that long if you don't understand what those boundaries are and how that makes someone else feel. Now, a lot of this is good for the people that are coming up as a pantry cook, as a server, as a grill cook, grill chef, a maitre d'. But I think, in my opinion, I love focusing in on those supervisors that are helping to really draw the influence, have influence on the culture that is happening in and around those four walls when everyone else isn't looking. So I know that you agree that supervisors are the bridge between expectations and execution. But what do they really need in order to succeed, though? Because we may put them in position, but what are the things that may be missing in order to help them succeed when they're helping to create that culture?
So I remember being a supervisor. I remember being the employee who showed up in college, working at this place called Cafe Venezia. And I'm 19 working there. And I'm responsible and I love it. And the owner came to me and was like, I got a position I need somebody to be opener in the morning and closer at night, not clopening, but like, taking on the different positions. You're responsible. Would you want the position? I was like, comes with a raise. I was like, let's do it. And so here I am. I have two things that most supervisors get, which is keys to the door, which is hell of a responsibility, and the ability to comp food and a drink.
Mm.
And immediately we make sure that those are given. What I was not given was, okay, and I'm showing up and I'm going to make it on time. And, you know, the person who I wanted to like, who was 2 years older than me at the fraternity, showed up a little bit late. And how do I say, come on, man, like, I need you here. Of course I'm not going to do that, because that's going to affect my social, relationship with this individual. And so I have no tools of how to communicate them. And there wasn't nearly the structure in place that I wouldn't need to communicate this to them, because it was clearly communicated in an objective system. And so, we all start to fault. I'm not going to take that risk, which means the restaurant's going to be struggling because things aren't going to be opening on time, which means eventually I'm going to give up my position as a leader because I don't want to deal with it, because it's not worth it. And then instead of me building a bench up, we're doing a revolving door, and also behavior isn't being coerced and corrected, influenced and corrected. And so how do we set that up? And that's part of what you and I are into. And to me, I'm approaching it from a couple different ways. And first is teaching a 18-year-old how to have an awkward conversation with an 18-year-old. And how do we do this? I go back to stories where I'm not going to tell them what to do. I grabbed a story of a fellow 18-year-old that was like, let me tell you some of what happened. And I asked somebody, and they're like, why don't you try to do it like this next time? Say it like this, right? And so really giving them the practice and the tools to have these. Now, you got to learn it in real time too. So you got to get out there, but let's arm you with the practice and the tools and the role playing so that you know what to say and how to do this and what to set it up. That's the first. The other thing, so arm them with the information. The other thing is, it's on us to establish systems so we can minimize the micromanaging as much as possible. And the way we do that is through, in training, constant general pressure of micromessaging. And we do that with our media stew of different things, of continually, rolling out how we need you to behave. And the second is any form of training or system in place so that I'm not the jerk to tell you, you got to show up on time, or let's put the rag back into the sanitizer bucket, which is a huge one. You'll see that's a big one, right? It's illegal. You can't leave the rag out. I'm not going to take that. I'm just going to keep putting it in for people who didn't do it. Or, that shouldn't be my responsibility. And me to tell you to do it, I don't want to nag you. Maybe you are, not the jerk, but you suck a little bit because you're putting me in a position that I got to continue to nag you. Well, that's only clear if from the top down, the organization, we've said, this is training, this is the expectation. Everybody, when you pass the rag, if you see it outside the bucket, you throw it in the red bucket. It's done.
Yep.
That way, let's minimize the me to micromanage. Let's not make me the nudge, but let's put you in the position of power, employee, fellow team member, that why'd you put me in this position? And most managers, restaurant managers are just us, cool people, shift leads that are just taking on more responsibility. Why are we putting them in the position to have to, we're the jerks to put them in the position to have to manage us? Managers should only be there to support, manage the situation, not the people. Uh-huh. Support the people, manage the moment. That is how we do it. That's how I'm looking to do it.
I like how you used the tactic of telling stories. And I think that's very effective, not only in branding, and we're always told, Sean Walchef, tell your story. Make sure you tell your story. And if you feel you've told it 1,000 times, tell it 1,000 more. But telling stories to anyone, it doesn't matter if they're tech savvy, or if they were raised in sports since the age of 7 and have always been told what to do. It doesn't matter between those two gaps. Because if they're a tech person that has been online, they've been on social media, they've had free will to say and do what they want and go and learn what they want when they want and express themselves. Typically, if you just tell them do this and don't do this, that might not sink in as to the why. But when you can tell that story and you can help connect those emotions to those trigger points within their nervous system, and then begin to see and feel what you're saying, not because there's this fence, this guard up, and someone's trying to tell me what to do, but they're picturing the moment in what you're speaking towards, and they can feel the characters that you're speaking to, and then they understand. So telling that story, very impactful tactic in order to help people understand the difference between right and wrong while giving actionable feedback in the moment to help change future behavior. I love that.
100%. And sometimes, just to counterpoint that a little bit, the why works without the story, so that when the story comes in, it's the mixed media stew. You got to flip it around a little bit, but the why is just so vital in this, in just like the quickest way, because we do it like this, right? And you kind of set it up a little bit, and so both of those pieces together are huge. Something that you touched on that I know you're a big proponent on is, and if you're constantly reinforcing something, whether it be positive or expectations or anything, if you're reinforcing it, maybe then you throw a story in the middle, you're doing things. Either way, as a leader, you have this constant interaction and communication, and you teach your frontline shift leads to do this. Well, then if you need to coach somebody, there's less of the chance that they're putting up that barrier you talked about, that this person's coming to correct me, because it's not always a defense mechanism. You're just expecting the information, because sometimes it's very complimentary, sometimes it's very constructive, whatever it is, it's not always constructive when you're talking to me, or negative. Therefore, I'm not putting up this immediate block. The most important thing to connect with the other individual, and we learned this building de-escalation training, was empathy. And the way that you get empathy is to see that this person's on my side. So having something positive, something that you agree on, whatever it is. So this idea, this constant general pressure, the person's open to this idea that whatever it is, you're here, you got my back. So I'm going to listen to it, which then allows the story to resonate, to land, the why to resonate, to land. But that constant coaching and stuff you touch on is huge for the individual to not put up those immediate defenses that we do when we think this individual doesn't have my back.
It really does boil down to how we start off those conversations. I have this one document that says, say this, not that. And yes, it is a piece of paper, but what it does is it helps to teach people who don't know how to use their words. Don't start off a conversation like this.
Right.
Start it off like this versus saying, man, you keep burning up that sauce, Billy. And every time you burn up that sauce, it just sucks, because then we have to redo it and we are losing time on this order. Versus, hey, Billy, I've seen your sauce come out great, but I've noticed the past few times it's been breaking. Do me a favor, turn down the heat. Let me see your sauces the next few times, and let's make sure that the heat control, whatever. But the start of it, the start of that conversation is going to either A, have them hear every other word, or just hear Billy, you suck. Right. Or they hear you stating how to change future behavior and the fact that you've seen them do better in the past. When they get used to hearing you having that type of constructive feedback to where it's not going straight negative, you can always tie in the great moments. Not always. Every moment doesn't need a tie-in of something great, but how you start to that conversation will either change future behavior or cause them to push back more, which in place waste more time. Kind of like I'm doing with this conversation. This is your show, Jason.
No,
I'm
I
just
love it.
your guest.
Well, right, exactly. So let's pick up. Let's unravel that a little bit. So 100%, I love that idea of you're coming out of the gates by saying, "Hey, I noticed that you've really been doing this great, but recently, and we think about the ands and the buts, there's been a couple of times where it's been breaking. I got a suggestion on what I think we can move through this. Are you open to that? Cool. Let's try this." And you want to do it in a kind of casual way, and if you can, and be a person talking to a person, and not be the hall monitor and formalize it, and blow it up to be bigger than it needs to be, and just kind of have that conversation with them, and know that you're looking out to that 100%. Another thing, in addition to that, as you started it, by the way, side note, I hate the compliment sandwich, or I'm not a fan of it. So it can't be contrived and inauthentic. We're just talking about the lead-in that shows the brain this person's on my side. A little compliment, a little something. On the other side of it, or in addition, I was talking to a leader as experienced as I am. I'm helping him kind of like, off the books, just kind of weekly, giving a call, talking to him, helping them on track as some changes are happening in their organization. And he was supposed to give me an update on a thing that I'd asked, which was, set your weekly goals and whatnot. And he was like, he talked about kind of, and he did, he got really busy and pulled away a little bit. And the little old school of me, because old school to old school, because I'm not talking to a younger manager who reports up, I was really about to come out and be like, listen, man, drop my F-bomb and go, do it or don't do it, and I'm not talking to you. This is my time, and don't waste, And that could have been effective in a particular point. But I said to him, all right, do me a favor. I know you want to deliver this because you're asking me to help, and you've appreciated this. He's like, he's like, yeah. I said, so something's getting in the way. Let's kind of figure out what's getting in the way so we can move through this. And he was like, well, I picked up a couple other, we lost a DO, director of ops. And so now I'm driving around to people's locations, and I'm in the car far more than I was before. I was like, okay, that I can work with. Here's what we're going to do. Open up ChatGPT, and we're going to work this way. And you're going to set the list and talk about it and ask it to populate a PDF for me at the start of the week and then the end of the week of how you did. And along the week, just go back to that chat while you're in the car and update it, and it will produce the report for me. He's like, I didn't think about that. I was like, do you think that will solve where we are? He's like, absolutely. I was like, okay, well, if it doesn't, we're going to move through the next one, or I'm stopping these conversations, right? Then the little old school of me came out. It was, and so we'll see what happens on Monday, how the call goes. It was that idea, though, of saying, and going back to the sauce or whatever, and saying, we know what standard is. We've agreed to something. It's not hitting. Talk to me about, like, what do you think is getting in the way? Because sometimes your cook might say, truthfully, these burners suck. They're inconsistent, or it happens. Or truthfully, this floor mat or John keeps coming over. Something gets in the way. So open up that conversation and get buy-in, because they might have the exact solution. Either way, they take ownership. And that I love.
That's money. That is pure gold. Okay. Now, your execution of training is, I can absolutely say, miles above what people are used to training, whether in the restaurant industry or not. They are so used to seeing in 2D, and you are in 4D with a shadow. What is your long-term vision of standardized training, not just the top shelf of training? What is your vision of standardized training, and how can we get there?
7 years ago when I launched Arrow Up, it was the goal of taking all of these training that I put together from Michelin star companies down to mom and pop shops and synthesizing them that I've done, which is out of the box and ready to go, so that any restaurant could turn it on and it's out of the box, digitized, and you just begin. Like I said, 80% of it there. I started with compliance because we had some other issues to tackle that we got into. Then we moved into safety. Then we moved into leadership development. Now we're moving into what you're talking about. And what's really kind of crazy is, unless you're fine dining and there's some specific things, aside from the menu, like I said, 80 to 90% of it is going to be the same for quick service to quick service, fast casual to fast casual, and full service to full service. And so Arrow Up's out of the box training being digitized as we speak on our platform or others, because we are, it's not just about the tech. I want to be where people are. I think is going to really help, at least for now, small to medium-sized businesses navigate the pitfalls that a lot of people hit, and then attract organized people, because organized people want to work for organized environments. Now, let's talk about something we're about to launch. Just here, just now, spoken. What's coming down the pipeline?
Love
It's
it.
going to be the beginning that leads to this next phase. What we are launching is We Arrow Up. Now, it's not there yet. It's coming because we're working with a couple sponsors. We Arrow Up is wearrowup.com. It's a template, but you'll see. We are rolling out free micro training to anyone who wants it, because restaurants are America's #1 first job, as we said. And a lot of these people need the skills and the tools and whatnot to get going. So there is the 8-minute micro course of the basics, the 101s of working together. Talks about showing up on time, not a way that's like, you got to show up on time, like people telling a story. It's got slips, trips, and falls. It's got how these are life skills, right? Then we go into micro course, a 4-minute course, 5 minutes on communication. How do we speak? The words we use, as we said, the difference between can you move and I'm behind right here, and letting people know, because those things matter. Kitchen commandments, somewhat of the 10 commandments of what we expect from you working in the kitchen. It's a minute and a half fun little video attached to a course that I absolutely love, and
Kind of
hits
like
it from the
say knife behind,
Yep.
herd,
And so all that stuff, and when to taste the food, and use the salt. Manager feedback, cashiering 101. And what we're going to do is, now we're still selling our compliance training to anyone who is from small business to, our last one had 350 units. We got the best anti-harassment safety courses. Come to arrowuptraining.com and we will, get you the right price for compliance training. But for all of these other things, We Arrow Up, my vision is we're going to roll this out, give it for free to everybody, let them tell us what they need, start to build on it. We're not giving away all the secret sauce on leadership, we'll see, but so much that's helping the frontline staff. And then my goal is to have co-sponsors funding it with us so that we can continue to give this away and get the Arrow Up way of doing things out to everybody, and get that 0 to 1 that restaurants need. That's coming down the pipeline very, very quickly. And then it's going to be all community built, right? We're going to work with people to keep building this up. So I'm really excited. That will then be also a great net to see who wants to come on the platform and do more trackable training and task management and standard operating procedures. But let's get this out to everybody.
I'm honored you shared that on this podcast. Wow, that would be awesome, Jason. I mean, it really is a huge gap that the small to medium sized restaurants out there have in stating that we don't have the budget in order to do training right. I just need you to watch me and do what I do, but don't say what I say because I'm the boss. That's not real training. And being able to offer that free training, micro training to everyone. Yes, I can see that as the future.
You like it? It's cool. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I mean, we'll see. I can just tell you I'm excited, and we're calling it the Restaurant Essentials. And so the Restaurant Essentials are the basics that are universal across the board. So we've established a cohesive, agreed upon language and set of expectations. Let's pass on the right. When we're walking towards each other, that's how we do it in the States.
Yep.
When we're right,
Yep.
corner, behind, picking things up off the floor. All of those basics, and down to the idea of, the worst shift you've ever experienced most likely is when a coworker didn't show up.
Yep.
So are you going to do that to your other coworkers? Right. And so we just really start to build all that into it. And that's part of, as Sean says, everyone's a media company. I mean, you're an incredible media company. That's a piece of our media company. And these are high design courses, high produce, high design micro training. So it's a blanket way, going back to the idea of let's just do it the arrow up way, and then laid a framework to the basics, and then every culture within itself, because you've established expectations and trackability. Well, now the culture is going to live inside the experience you're uniquely providing and who the people are and what music you're playing, right? Our goal is to get to the point that we don't tell you what your culture is. We just cover the basics so you can actually curate the culture and not be hamstrung and dealing with all the other crap that was manageable. And really, if you just were proactive with it, you were going to you were going to clear that stuff out of the way so you can get to the good stuff.
I love it. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be the one that helps to shape or define that culture. That's going to come naturally with the owner, with the founders, with the team. It is managing the minutia, the basics, the essentials in order to help get to where that culture can grow. I have 2 more questions for you. 2 more. Okay.
2 more.
If you could sit at a leadership table with 3 other leaders, whether alive or from history, who would you choose and why?
Yeah, I thought about this, and I appreciate you setting it up. And so here are 3, because I'm going to talk about 3 very specific moments. So these are maybe a little heady for in old school for, I don't know, as I know the expansive of listeners. First is John F. Kennedy, right at the decision of the Bay of Pigs time to literally go to war or not go to war. I want to be there, and I want to know, and I've read books on it and whatnot, but I want to know how did you know to make that decision? Because at the end of the day, it's about deciding, right? And it's about deciding. And that, I think, might be another question coming up, so I'm going to hold off on that. The second would be Martin Luther King Jr., right when he was done with the I Have a Dream speech. Not before, but right after. Did you celebrate? Did you let excitement fill the room? Was it so serious and of a moment that you couldn't even take the time for that? What was the room like right after that? When people were hugging you and being like, you crushed this. This thing is going to live forever. What was he like? What was that like? Do you let that moment sink in or not sink in? I really would love to have been in the room in that moment. And the third is Abraham Lincoln, right before going on stage for the Gettysburg Address. And that one, again, what would you think that you're about to accomplish? You're on a battlefield. You're honoring those that have lost. The country's figuring out if it's worth it or not worth it, but you have ideals, and you need to say something that's going to inspire people to continue to lose their lives and the lives of their children, to believe in something bigger than themselves. Tell me right before you go on, like, what does, aside from winning the war, like, what does success look like? And what is the conviction that you felt really comfortable being able to tell people to do this? Why? Why were you so sure that this was something that you could say? So I loved that question, and I appreciate you setting it up, because it's not just a leader and being able to pick their brain, but there was a moment in time for each 3 of these leaders. And I want to know what the hell was up at that moment.
That's deep. That is next level, and it is getting into the thing that we don't tend to go back and do, meaning whenever we fail, we tend to let it drag us through for the next week, the next month, the next year, 10 years. We hold on to that negative motion or emotion more than something positive. Whenever we get into whenever it happened, how come we don't really go back and hit the pause and understand the why? and actually learn from that and then mimic that, not just mimic it, but make it systematic to where we are able to have those moments more often or spread them onto others. So I love that. Last question. What's one conversation in your career that profoundly shaped how you lead today? And I know you've had lots of conversations, lots of great ones, but what's one that comes to mind that says this one right here is what helped build the foundation of how I do what I do?
Picking up a little bit on the last answer, I was a young vice president of a restaurant group, little experience for my position. And I kind of took that position from director up because I needed to control the ops to run service. And I was really looking to be democratic. I had my team. I had my director of learning with me. I had my director of operations with me, and a few other people. And we're sitting in the room and we're trying to figure out how do we push the openings and what do we do because the money's demanding particular things of us. And I went around the room and I got everybody's opinion. And then instead of just making a decision, I kept talking about it. And I asked a couple more questions, not necessarily because I needed their information, but I was trying to be a little bit more democratic and make sure everybody truly felt heard and that I was not ready to decide. And so it was part me floundering and part me also wanting to be extremely democratic with the room. And my director of learning said, who was a GM with us and worked her way up, look, doesn't matter at this point. You're our boss. You just got to make a decision and we'll follow you. And I was like, oh my God. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, right? People would rather follow decisiveness, even off a cliff, multiple times than work under a leader who can't make up their mind or who's trying to just be so democratic that everybody feels heard. And you want to make sure everyone's heard, and you absolutely want to make sure that you get the right input, especially from your senior leadership, because they're going to give you the information you need, but then just decide. Even if it's right or wrong, the fact that you decided was the most important thing. If it's time, it's time, and don't wait a second longer. Make sure you don't do it too soon, but when it's time, far too many leaders wait too long, myself included, and that moment hit me right over the head. And I would like to think since then, I've practiced that. I've really, really practiced that. So be a decisive leader for your team.
I agree 100%. Ted Lasso does a really good job. I'm sure you know who Ted Lasso is. Ted Lasso does a really good job of using that democratic coaching style in order to get the voice of everyone in the room that needs to have a say in that choice. And then, but just know that after you hear those voices, that you are still the one that has to make that choice. I also like how Amazon Bezos has one of his rules of the only people that need to be in the room for a meeting is just enough to feed 2 pizzas. If there's more people in the room that would eat more than 2 boxes of pizza, you have too many people at the table. The only reason
never heard
why
that. How big of a pizza?
I'd say medium.
Okay.
The only reason why someone is in a meeting, and this is one of my rules, the only reason why someone is in a meeting, you ask them to be in a meeting, because if they weren't there, then decisions would not be able to be made in that 30 minutes or 60 minutes.
Yeah,
if they are asked to be in a meeting and they have nothing to do with any decision that is being made, that they're not the core, then why are they in the meeting? They can be told what the thing is going to happen afterwards. So that's also one thing. Now, My listeners, I'm sure they absolutely loved a lot of what you said. Some of them know you, a lot of them may not. Where can they find out more about Jason Berkowitz, Arrow Up Training, and We Arrow Up as well?
So, love it. Appreciate the opportunity. I am on LinkedIn, Jason D. Berkowitz for LinkedIn. You will find me there. And both Jasons, Brooks and Berkowitz, have LinkedIn presence. We like to communicate with our platform and our people and our community. ArrowUpTraining.com. And we just put it together a new compliance tab. Check that out. Pretty straightforward with pricing and all of what we do and how we deliver our compliance training for restaurant operators by restaurant operators. So there's a reason to use that. And then depending on when this launches, but let's say October 1st, by October 1st, go to wearrowup.com and then let us know. There'll be some emails and stuff. Take some courses and let us know what we should build next, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be community sourced. And then a year from now, hopefully we got American Express and Coca-Cola and all those people sponsoring this, and we're just going to keep building.
Love it. Jason, thank you for sharing your insights and your passion and your stories, because they help to really connect those dots. And to everyone tuning in, of course, if you like the episode and it resonated with you, don't just say this was great. Subscribe, leave a review, share it with a leader that can benefit from better training, stronger teams, or even just better stories. You can visit jasonebrooks.com for more leadership tools and resources. And until next time, remember, manage, lead, coach, repeat. Thank you so much. Jason, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.